Hey guys, what's up? It's week 46, and this has been a very frantic week of trying to get everything onto my production grade infrastructure. And it couldn't come at a better time because as of right now, this moment, Replit, which is what I've been using to run all of the software that I built, is down. Let's dig into it. This was one of the most challenging weeks yet, actually, and as a reminder of what I've been doing is I started building all of my products on Replit and Airtable as my backend system so that I could save money while I validated my idea and figured out where my customers were going to be. Now that I've been getting revenue, it's been growing, I want to get onto actual production infrastructure that's going to cost a little bit, so I wanted to wait until this time. So now I'm at that point where revenue is paying for at least half my expenses, and it's time to make sure that the app doesn't go down and it's nice and fast for my customers. So that's why I've been doing all this production grade infrastructure setup. This week I've gotten almost all of it done, and here's kind of how it went. Everything was going really swimmingly until I got into the very final stretch of verifying the builds on Lambda. First of all, I had to rewrite some of the pieces of the app to work with Lambda. The way Lambda works is it pauses your execution environment, runs a request, and then pauses it again. So if you have any background timers or anything that works out of sync, there are going to be problems potentially with running on Lambda, and I had to rewrite some of my code to deal with that. Another problem I had was the Shopify part of my app unfortunately has to run in a totally separate environment from my main app, and since it's regular JavaScript and not TypeScript, it's a lot harder to catch errors before they actually happen in production. And because of the nature of a first-time production setup, every time you run into a problem that you didn't have in your development environment, there's basically a 10-minute wait between each attempt at fixing a problem, and that's because you've got to get your code built and deployed to the infrastructure to even test it. So I worked as hard as I could to make each one of those builds as impactful as I could, but nevertheless, eventually you're going to have some trial and error and just trying to get things right, and it can be a big headache. In the end, I got everything deployed except for the database, which I'm very close to. So we're still running off of Airtable right now in production, but it will probably only be there for maybe another day, and then we'll be on fully new infrastructure. Okay, so here's a little look at how I did this. This is the Lambda for the application, and under the test tab, I basically have created an event called health check, and I've written code to handle that health check to basically show me everything that's running in the system, try some test connections. So this is all in my virtual private cloud. I've got connection to Redis and a database, and I need to make sure these connections are working in production. So that's basically what I've got going here. So I can basically create this event, hit test here, and then watch it run up here and check out the results. And everything is flying true right now. That's how I know I did it right. When I was setting all this up, sometimes I'd get errors in here and I'd have to go figure it out. And one of the ways to do that is by looking at the logs that Lambda produces. And that'll take me here, and then I can open up any of these logs and start looking through them. And right now, there's not much in there except for the test warning that I logged that you guys just saw. So if there were errors, this is how I would be debugging those errors. Once everything was running correctly, it was critical for me to create a dashboard to monitor what's going on and some very crucial alarms. So first, let's take a look at the dashboard. These are some of the things that I really want to pay attention to. One is the Redis memory usage. So that's for all my locking mechanisms and my caching. I've got a very small node on Redis. It's 500 megabytes basically. And if that thing breaks its memory usage, I'm going to be a little bit in trouble. It won't be devastating, but I need to know when that's running out. Something I've looked at for a while now has been the Airtable throttles. This was going to go away as soon as I finish the production infrastructure move to a real database. But this basically lets me know when Airtable is breaking. And this is the database that I'm moving to. So nothing is really hitting it yet. So right now it's at about 12% CPU usage, and I'm going to be watching this as I move to that database to see when that database is no longer be able to handle the load that I'm putting on it, and I'm going to need to upgrade it. So this will happen pretty frequently as we grow. I'm hoping it'll hold steady for at least several months, but you never know. You got to be watching these things. All right, the next thing to look at is Lambda and how Lambda is doing. All of my code is running on Lambda, so I need to be making sure that it's staying up. The two big things to look out for here are throttling. When is Lambda throttling? Because there's so many requests coming in that it can't actually issue them all at once. And then also how many concurrent executions are running at any given point. This is a totally fine graph. It's going to, anytime there's requests coming in, there's going to be multiple coming in. The danger here will be if this really holds for a long period of time and the number gets pretty high, that will be something to look at. And then the last big thing here is errors. So any error that my app is logging, I want to know about it immediately, and I really want to know if it's kind of sustaining. You see, I've got a couple errors here that I've been working on this morning. And that brings me to the CloudWatch Alarms. This is what's going to notify me if something's going haywire. So even if I'm not actually at my desk monitoring things, I'm at least going to get an email that says, hey, something's up. So the things I want to look out for is submission failures. Whenever somebody's trying to submit a job and there's some kind of error, I definitely want to know about that. I want to know if any of my Lambdas are being throttled. So that means they might be choking out. I want to see if my database CPU is consistently holding high. I want to know when my Redis memory store is running out of memory, because again, that's a pretty low amount I have right now. And I want to know when Airtable is throttling my requests, which again, that's not going to matter pretty soon because I'll be on a production grade database. So there's a bit of trial and error when you make these alarms work, but the most important thing is that you have some crucial metrics coming to your inbox. If anything is going wrong, you can always tweak this as you go to make this more and more legitimate to your situation. And I already touched on this a little bit, but looking at the logs, this is a good place for debugging, but you also have to be really careful about cost. CloudWatch logging can get completely out of control and really eat up your budget. So the big thing I do is I keep a retention of these at the most 1 week. And then also I keep a look on the stored bytes here to see how my logs are doing. If you start seeing a whole lot of logs in there, that's going to cost you a lot of money. So it's something to keep an eye on. Another critical tool in the production infrastructure world is cost management and tracking. So this is AWS's Cost Explorer, and I'm going to basically look at, you can see my service charges right now over the past several months have been pretty low. These two here, these spikes are domain names that I purchased. So there's really almost nothing I'm spending money on until this month when I'm starting to activate all these services. And last month I gave you guys an estimate, a projection of what I think it's going to cost me. And my estimate was about $106 a month. So let's dig and see how accurate I am. So first going to take my date range back to just, the last 7 days even will be fine. The most important thing really is to look at a normal day of use, at least one full day, maybe 3 or 4 days of typical use. So I'm going to change granularity to daily and then just see how things are going. And they're getting pretty steady here, so that's great. Okay, so I did make some changes this week as I was looking at some of this stuff. So you can see this going down a little bit as I made adjustments. Yesterday's costs were $567. So if I put that in here and multiply by 30, that's $170. That's quite a bit up from what I had anticipated. Let's try to dig into that. So the next thing I want to do is group by dimensions. First of all, you can see the usage here, the big buckets. Database here is the biggest one, and then followed by that is EC2 Other, which we're not quite sure what that is. We're going to have to drill into that. VPC cost is the next big one. So let's break this down by usage type. And now we're getting a little more concrete data here. So looking at yesterday's data, database cost is $175. That's about what I expected. The VPC endpoint hours, this is something I did not expect, and I think I know what this is now. I'm running RDS proxy. I have a read-write endpoint and a read-only endpoint on that. And what I didn't realize when I set this up was that creates a VPC endpoint that is actually a ongoing cost. So that's about $36 a month for both of those endpoints, which is really frustrating because they sell RDS proxy as $21 a month, which it is. That's coming out right. But this extra cost is something that I wasn't aware about. So there's $36 a cost right there. So some of these smaller ones here, you need really get into that. I'm using a Bastion instance, and that's 13 cents a day for that volume. And when you multiply that by 30, that's about $4. So really, when you start adding these all up, it does kind of make sense. And at this point, I don't really see anything that's wildly out of control. So I basically am going to rejigger my budget to focus on what the real costs are, and that's going to help me going forward. So this is probably a good time to take a quick look at my budget spreadsheet that I update you guys on from time to time. Right now, I don't have anything recorded for my income, my monthly recurring revenue. I just haven't got to it yet. My monthly costs are running at $122 when you factor in yearly subscriptions. So that's pretty good. This does not include the AWS cost increase that I just showed you guys. So it's about $158 in addition to what I was paying before. So when you add 158 to 122, my total costs are looking at about 280 right now with a monthly recurring revenue of, I think, 154. So I'm really just right at about halfway to profitability. And when you look at my recurring expenses here, there's nothing really standing out. So it's all just little stuff. Airtable's going to go away, so I'm going to save money there. The AWS costs are going to go up. I think all in all, we're looking pretty healthy. And the last thing I wanted to show you guys was the marketing campaign that I ran yesterday. I wanted to reach out to all the people who have been trialing my service and have expired for sometime in the past. There have been new features added since they joined, and also I want to see if there's anything I can do to get them to stay around. You can see my open rate's pretty good here. Everything's gone pretty well. I've been getting some responses from people. I've been getting feedback. So it's been a very positive campaign. I basically had 2 ideas for them. I said, 1, can I give you something that's going to be part of a pro plan, but can I give it to you for free? Would you like that feature? The other idea is, do you want to extend your trial? And because we've made some improvements and I think you'll be happy with them. So I'm offering to give them 14 more days. And so far I'd say this campaign was a pretty good success. Not sure if I got a lot of purchases. There were some that came in, but I'm not sure if they're from this email yet. But I definitely got some engagement from people, and I added some trial days to some people who requested it. So I think it was a positive thing overall. I am, however, very frustrated with MailerLite right now. I love the product's interface. I love how it works. I love the concepts behind it all, but some of the stuff simply does not work. I cannot set an automation that triggers on a specific date. It's just not working, and I've been working with their support to figure this out. And I've basically given them a deadline of tomorrow before I'm going to have to move to another service. And that bothers me, not only because I had this all set up and just ready to go, but also to write code for a new service to move all my users to. So very frustrating. I'm probably going to be leaving MailerLite unless they come through with a miracle soon. But, that's just how startup stuff goes sometimes. Okay, guys, that's it for this week. So the first part of this next week is going to be finishing up this production stuff, but then I'm going to be moving on to reacting to customer requests, maybe working on a pro plan for the Wix offering that I'm working on. I'm not actually quite sure because my head is still kind of swimming in this infrastructure land. So stay tuned and let's see what happens next week. Thanks.